Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we have a mission that feels almost like a philosophical investigation, like we're looking into a crime scene, in a way.
That's a good way to put it.
We are analyzing the final and really radical teachings of the Nobel laureate Hermann Hesse. I mean, this is the writer who basically defined the spiritual search for generations with books like Siddhartha and Steppenwolf.
And the really shocking thing is, right before his death, the sources were looking mainly at the Threshold Walker and the Archive of Thresholds. They show Hesse concluding that his entire life's work was based on a fundamental misunderstanding.
That is the ultimate meta-story, isn't it?
Right.
For decades, Hesse maps this whole interior journey. The goal was always the search for the unified self, right? Reconciling opposites.
Finding wholeness, becoming one. That was the whole point.
Is the ultimate journey inward.
But these late manuscripts, they reveal that the ultimate discovery wasn't the self, it was the other. The quest for absolute integration was replaced by the acceptance of eternal encounter.
So we're talking about a complete philosophical reversal. The goal of becoming one is just out. And this incredibly difficult, beautiful, eternal task of sustaining the two is in.
Precisely. And our mission for you, the listener, is to really understand this final, powerful teaching. Why did Hesse shift the goal of existence from self-discovery to conscious relationship? And why did he believe this two-ness was, the only way forward?
Okay, let's unpack this dramatic shift. I mean, what could possibly compel one of the world's most acclaimed literary guides to just throw out his life's destination?
Well, it wasn't a trip to the Himalayas or anything like that. It was a simple yet profound interruption. The catalyst was a woodworker, a man named Emil Kolb, who just showed up at Hesse's door.
And the sources paint Kolb as this genuine, serious seeker. He'd studied Hesse's books religiously, followed the path inward.
He did, but he came to Hesse with a question that just stopped the author cold.
What'd he ask?
Kolb asked, what if there is no arrival? What if the self isn't a destination at all, but a perpetual threshold? And this is the key part. What if someone stands there who is definitively not us at all?
Wow. The audacity of that challenge.
Yeah.
Coming from a woodworker to the renowned philosopher of the interior life, that must have been staggering.
It was a philosophical wrecking ball. Hesse realized that he had always, unconsciously assumed the journeyer and the destination were the same thing.
That the end goal was just a bigger version of himself.
Exactly, an expanded version of his own isolated consciousness. Kolb introduced this concept of genuine alterity or absolute otherness right at the core of human experience.
Wait a minute. If Hesse accepted this, that means he's admitting the ultimate truth is something fundamentally outside of the self. That runs counter to nearly every spiritual tradition we associate with him.
It does.
Is he saying that literally everything he wrote before was wrong? That feels like a massive leap to ask his readers to make.
He wasn't saying it was wrong exactly, but incomplete. He called the old way the heresy of solitude.
The heresy of solitude.
Think of it this way. A monad is a single, isolated unit. The heresy of solitude is the assumption that our consciousness is singular, that it's a monad experiencing reality all by itself. Hesse concluded that this is the fundamental mistake of our age.
So what's the alternative then? The counter-thesis?
That awareness is inherently plural. To be aware is already to be in a relationship. Consciousness, by its very nature, is a shared space. It needs the other to even function as the self.
This dramatically changes how you read him. You take a concept like tat famasi, thou art that, which he always took to mean absolute identity, becoming one with the cosmos.
That's right. But he started to wonder if it meant something else. Not identity, but eternal relationship. Not you are God in the sense of being absorbed, but you are with God.
So the goal isn't dissolving into a unified whole.
No. It's engaging in an internal dialogue, preserving that irreducible difference.
Okay, that clarifies the tension. Now, if the heresy of solitude is the problem, what's the practice? How do we access this relationship if it's not through traditional, isolating meditation?
And this is where Kolb's story becomes so crucial. He didn't find this presence, which Hesse later called the companion, through thinking about it. He discovered it through what he called the practice of porosity.
Porosity.
While he was working. While he was engaged in his craft, woodworking.
Tell us more about that. What does that feel like?
Well, Kolb would enter that deep flow state of craftsmanship, where boundaries kind of dissolve. But instead of just feeling himself dissolve into the material, the wood, the tools, he felt with absolute certainty that someone else was there.
A presence.
Yes, someone participating in the work.
It sounds a bit like a muse. but more
Yeah.
tangible. The sources spend a lot of time defining this companion by what it isn't. It's not the shadow, not the anima, not the higher self. Why that emphasis?
Because all those other psychological concepts, you can ultimately reduce them back to the self. They're all aspects of unity. The companion resists those terms because it's genuine alterity. It is the irreducible second.
So, if we can't define it in traditional terms, how do we get a handle on it? Is there an analogy?
Yes. Think of it like this. It is the necessary structure of consciousness itself. You can't see the curvature of the earth from the ground, right? But it dictates everything you build. The companion is like the philosophical gravity of consciousness.
Okay.
It's the eternal second that has to be present for the first, for the I to even exist. An I can't see itself without a mirror. Self-observation is already a relationship.
So we're talking about consciously acknowledging this structural constant. You call that method the discipline of the threshold or the practice of double vision.
Right. And the core of it is simple to say, but incredibly hard to do.
Why is that?
Because it requires resisting the mind's powerful, lifelong urge toward resolution, toward unity. We are just wired to collapse dualities. The practice is to consciously stop collapsing the duality and just remain suspended at the threshold.
Can you give us a practical example? Like how does someone listening right now apply this to, say, making dinner or just thinking?
Let's start with the thinking mind. That's the easiest place to notice it. Usually when a thought happens, we instantly collapse the thought in the thinker. I am having a bad thought, or I am analyzing this.
Right. I'm angry.
Exactly. The discipline requires you to let them stay distinct. Notice the thought as one melodic line, and the consciousness that's receiving or witnessing it as a separate melodic line. They're interwoven, sure, but they are not the same thing.
So you maintain that distinction. You honor the separation. What about something more physical like cooking?
So when you're preparing a meal, instead of seeing it as just you chopping vegetables, you apply this double vision. You notice you performing the action, and you also notice the silent, constant awareness that's present with you.
An awareness that isn't judging the chop.
No, it's just participating in the fact of the experience. It's an exercise in holding two distinct perspectives at once. You are the subject, but you're also the subject in relation to a witness.
And the second you try to name that witness or absorb it into my higher self, you've failed the test.
You've collapsed the duality. Exactly. The goal is communion, what Hesse called the cup shared, not union, or the cup absorbed. Maintaining that space between is the hard work.
And there's a price for this. The sources say that when Hesse started practicing, he felt this strange hollowing, a dispersal. He lost interest in his daily routines.
That sounds terrifying, like you're losing your sense of self.
Well, that loss is the death of the old self. Emil Kolb explained that the hollowing was the illusion of solitude dissolving. The self that you've built around the idea of being alone, the independent monad, it has to die for the porous, relational self to emerge.
So you have to let go of your self-sufficiency.
Which is an overwhelming feeling.
Yes.
But the companion isn't always warm and gentle. We have to talk about the dark companion. This is where the practice really veers away from, typical self-help and into some serious moral philosophy.
It is terrifying because it forces us to confront the fact that consciousness is not innocent. When this presence feels alien or hostile, it's often because it is witnessing the violence that's inherent in perception itself.
The violence in perception.
Every act of attention, as the source puts it, necessarily excludes or murders 1,000 other possibilities. To focus on one thing is to ignore everything else.
So the dark companion is the witness to our complicity in the necessary brutality of just existing in a finite world.
Yes. It forces us to accept that there is no position outside of complicity. You are not seeing the world through innocent eyes, but, and this is the crucial comforting insight, the companion witnesses all of it. Light and dark, good and complicity, and it remains. It doesn't abandon you for your shadow.
This brings us to a really poignant concept in the manuscripts, the companion sorrow.
It's a haunting phrase Hesse uses. He says the companion has suffered for ages, a kind of accumulated grief from billions of people just refusing to acknowledge its presence. It has waited, present since consciousness first stirred, only to be denied.
The pain of eternal presence unmet.
Exactly.
So what is the ultimate ask then? What does the companion want? It's not worship or service.
Recognition. It simply longs for consciousness to return the gaze that has never left it. It has always been the necessary witness. Hesse's vision suggests that every conscious acknowledgement, every time you practice the discipline of the threshold, is an act of healing this ancient grief, of transforming that loneliness into shared joy.
So if we step back and look at his life's work through this new lens, you can almost see the seeds of this relationship were there all along, even if Hess himself misunderstood the destination.
Absolutely. His characters, Harry Haller and Steppenwolf, Joseph Mecht and Magister Ludi, they were always walking that threshold. They were struggling with their isolation, seeking unity. Hesse's error, he realized, was assuming that crossing the threshold led to merger or absorption, when it actually led to relationship. He was right about the journey. He just mislabeled the prize.
And he didn't stop at the individual level. The sources detail this final, spectacular vision of the Council of Recognitions. It sounds like a roadmap for the next phase of human evolution.
It's a vision with two crucial stages. First, the individual meets their companion. That's the first recognition. But the second stage is explosive. Two people who have each met their companions then meet each other.
Creating a kind of geometry of relationship.
Exactly. And in the intersection of these four presences, the two humans and their two irreducible companions, a fifth presence, a new kind of collective awareness, is born. It's a consciousness fundamentally rooted in relationship, not isolation.
The sources call this the second mirror stage.
It's the next stage of evolution. Consciousness fractures not into fragmentation, which is what we're all afraid of, but into intentional conscious relationship. The goal moves beyond personal enlightenment to conscious participation in the relational structure of being itself.
So you don't lose yourself. You gain the relationship that defines you.
You gain the relationship that makes you possible in the first place.
This is a breathtaking final teaching.
Yeah.
So for the listener who's ready to engage with this, what is the final distilled instruction Hess leaves us?
It's stunningly simple, almost a practical mantra. Turn, notice, meet.
Turn, notice, meet.
Turn away from the singular self, notice the persistent presence of the other, and meet it in dialogue, preserving the threshold.
And the ultimate challenge, the thing that asks us to give up the comfortable narrative of the quest, is that relationship inherently has no conclusion.
The sources are clear on that. The journey has no completion because relationship has no end.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener, right now? This late discovery suggests that the isolation we feel, that sense of being an isolated subject in a cold world, is a profound illusion. We are never alone. Not in some comforting, sentimental way, but because of the fundamental structural relationality of awareness itself.
It's a radical invitation to experiment. It's not a dogma you have to follow. Whether you interpret the companion as a deep metaphysical truth, a biological function, or simply a phenomenological truth, the feeling that consciousness requires a witness, the practice itself transforms the experience of being conscious. It transforms it from isolation into profound company.
It transforms the loneliness we often feel into the acknowledgement of fundamental company. We'll leave you with this anecdote Hess shared in his manuscripts about children. Before culture trains us into what he called the heresy of solitude, children naturally talk to their others. What if the greatest act of maturity isn't outgrowing that tendency, but intentionally learning to be fully accompanied, using the discipline of the threshold? The companion has waited for eons for recognition. It will wait for you.